Women have many rights in Sunni Islam. Women are very respected in Sunni Islam if we cherry pick the verses that we like from the Hadith books. But don't worry, women, when you embrace Islam, you will be a very, very respected baby making machine. And if you can't make babies, then maybe Sunniism is not for you. Sunnis like to perpetuate the idea that women are highly respected in Islam. That is the truth. Women are actually highly respected in the Quran and in Islam. But when it comes to Sunnism, where that religion, where they pick what they want from whatever books that they've written, as God says, do they have a book that they study it? Well, they get to pick whatever they want from said books. Really dumb what they judge. But they like to cherry pick the verses to show how the Prophet was formidable with his spouses and how he actually took care of his wives in a positive manner. But they do also hide a lot of the nonsense that they don't want you to know, yet they treat their women in said nonsense.
السؤال الثالث: هل هناك أمور أشياء يخفيها رجال الدين عن الناس؟ فعندنا كثير أمور رجال الدين يخفون 90% ويخشون، والله يخافون يطلعون. أنا كنت دائما أتمنى أصحاب الفكر المتشدد يطلع يفتي للناس. والله أمنية حياتي أصحاب الفكر المتشدد يطلع يفتي الناس. لن يستمر. لماذا؟ لأنه يتبنى تراثا فيه مصائب.
So for example, pretty sure most of you heard about the hadith that the majority of the women are going to hell because the Prophet was told that the majority of women are going to hell apparently. Yet the Quran clearly states that the Prophet doesn't know who's going to hell and who doesn't know to hell because he doesn't know what's going to be done with him, yet the people in front of him. But apparently just because, women have been created from the rib of man, just because Abu Huraira said so, and the rib that was chosen was a crooked rib. And if you try to straighten women, the deal gonna break. So don't try to straighten your women because obviously it's against what the hadith is telling you. So you leave your women crooked. But that's only the first few steps of the program that we want to put you on. Because there is a verse in the Quran that people highly misinterpret that when you are finding insubordinations from your wife, you need to put them on a 3-step program. You put her on the first step and you push her. Actually, what they try to tell you is that you're supposed to 1, admonish her, B, you have to forsake her in bed, and 3, domesticate her. I mean, not in a good way. But if you actually scrutinize the verse and see what it actually tells you, it isn't a 3-step program. Because God didn't say then, He said and. He said wa. He didn't say thumma. So I don't know where they get the idea of a 3-step program, but the truth is, all 3 steps need to be done in the same place. Now, when we look at the word فَضْرُبُوهُنَّ, which people like to say that it means strike them, it does not necessitate for them to be hit at that point. Because there are other verses in the Quran which shows that when that word, that specific word, this way that it's being said in its ambiguous form, when you look at the Quran as a whole, you realize that it can mean to push someone away into the land or to make somebody walk away. Because يَضْرِبُونَ فِي الْأَرْضِ. So do they strike the ground? Are they beating the ground at that point? أَفَنَضْرِبُ عَنْكُمُ الذِّكْرِ. Should we strike the dhikr off you? So what does that mean? Does that mean that it's being taken away? Or does that mean that we're going to beat the living Or does that mean that we're going to hit him? But, interestingly enough, just because we're looking at the Quran, one thing that is commonly attributed to Sunnism is that women shouldn't get higher education. In fact, she doesn't even need to worry about education because, well, you could see in countries like Afghanistan and the Taliban how they want to ban women from getting educated.
And the Taliban government of Afghanistan has ordered an indefinite ban on university education for women.
Even though, in the Quran it does say, وَقُلْ رَبِّي زِدْنِي عِلْمًا. Apparently that's not for women. Because obviously it's talking just to the Prophet. Or is it talking just to men? So women should not say, God, increase me in knowledge. And should they not seek knowledge? Even though God is telling us that we should be seeking knowledge by what God has been teaching us and what He has permitted us to learn.
How do we define education?
So we should
education? Not say that education means ilm. Because we know from the statement of the Prophet ﷺ that seeking knowledge is a farida. It's an obligation on every Muslim. But the understanding of ilm there is ilm of Islamic. Yes. How to pray, correct aqeedah, how to have tahara. Like those are the obligatory aspects of knowledge. It doesn't matter if you're male or female. So that's equality right there.
Yes, that's definitely equality. The only education that is available for women is on how to wipe her butt as per Bukhari or on how to pray. She can spend the rest of her life learning how to pray if she wants to chase knowledge as God told her to. It's funny how you guys define the words as you please when ilm literally means knowledge. What do you mean you want to learn how to drive? That requires education. You have boobies like Daniel Hakikatu. Go be a wet nurse or something. Why should they even get educated if they're not allowed in the mosque?
The Prophet ﷺ told us that praying in your home, which is at the moment your hotel room, is more rewarding than praying in the haram. Now, logically, most women and men would think that, come on, the Prophet said a prayer in the haram is equivalent to 100,000. And you want me to pray in my hotel room? I said, I don't want you to pray in your hotel room. This is what the Prophet said ﷺ to one of his female companions who said, O Prophet of Allah, I love to pray with you in the masjid of Medina, where the single prayer there is equivalent to 1,000 prayers elsewhere other than Mecca, in the Masjid al-Haram. So the Prophet said, I know you love to pray with me, but praying home is better than praying with me in the masjid.
You women even ruin it for yourself. If that female companion could keep her mouth shut, then the Prophet would have never said such words and told you to pray in your home. Maybe she annoyed him, because you women are crooked. So when God is saying, oh, children of Adam, Bani Adam, apparently he's just talking to the sons. When he's saying to them that they should visit every mosque and that they should bring their decorations and their food and what God has been giving them to every mosque, apparently that's just to men. Because when God says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, all you have believed, again, he's only addressing the men. So for example, in chapter 2, when God says, Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu, la tubtilu sadaqatikum bil manni wal adha. Do not negate your charities or your alms with burdening people or hurting people after you give your money. That proves that women should not be giving money in charities and alms, because obviously Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu is only specific to men. That's why in the congregation prayer that's listed in the Quran, when God tells you Ya ayyuhalladhina amanu idha nudiya ila salati min yawm al-jum'ah, if it is called towards the prayer from the day of congregation, which to them is Friday, then you should go seek the remembrance of God. But that does not apply to women, because obviously women should be praying in their house. They should not be going to mosques, despite the many hadith where Aisha is sitting in the mosque, or where Aisha is praying in the mosque, or cleaning the semen off the Prophet's clothes in the mosque. But I guess she's not the woman that we need to be following if you're a woman, because she's not a good example, being the wife of the Prophet and all. You know what? The Prophet himself was saying that his wife Aisha, the mother of the believers, is on par with the women that tried to seduce Joseph, if not worse, because she would not listen to his instruction, even though he admonished her many times, telling her to let Abu Bakr lead the prayer because he's too sick. These crooked women. But you know what? I know why. I know why these women cause all these problems. Because they're just innately impure. They have periods, and God said that it's an impurity, a physical impurity. And just because in another verse God says that only the pure can approach the Quran, to them it means physical purity. Yet they inside cannot actually approach the Quran and cannot understand it because they're not pure inside. Because that's what the verse actually means, that the people who are sincere and have purity within them, they are the people who can actually approach the Quran, but to them it's physical. Because according to Abi Sa'id al-Khudari in Sahih Bukhari, you are deficient in both religion and intelligence. Religion due to the fact that you have menstrual cycles. And intelligence is because God said that when it comes to writing debts, 2 women should be used as a witness instead of 1 man, even though God is talking about the issue of memory here rather than intelligence, but they know more. So she can't pray, she can't fast, she can't do anything because she's bleeding for 4 days.
A woman in her menstrual cycle is not allowed to fast. She's not allowed to pray the 5 daily prayers either. Some people say, why not? Well, Allah Almighty has decided.
You lie and then you attribute it to God. I can't trust something that bleeds for 4 days and doesn't die, said the Sunni. But again, if you scrutinize the verse, God says, do not approach them in sexual activities until they purify themselves. Because why? Menstruation, it's harmful. It can hurt you as a man, sticking your things in things that should not be stuck when the time is not there for you to stick them in. I shouldn't be saying that. But that's the actual truth. Is the fact that God is telling you on how to keep pure physically and spiritually. So are you telling me that when she's menstruating and she's actually being attacked by the devil in her mind, she cannot ask God for help? So she can't say, A'udhu bi rabbil falaq min sharri ma khalaq. She cannot actually use the words of the Quran at that point because she's just an impure filth. But you know what's also cool that you clearly find in the Sunni communities? Honor killings. Time when an 8-year-old is being honorably killed because she refused marriage. God tells you that you have to marry women. For them, children especially little daughters, it's okay for them to get married. But yet I don't see them pushing their 6-year-olds and 7-year-olds for marriage, because to them it's a little weird, but it's okay for their prophet to do so, even though our prophet never married an 8-year-old or a 6-year-old or had sex with a 9-year-old. I don't know how they missed it, but in chapter 4, God tells us to test the orphans until we sense from them maturity to give them the money that their parents left behind. Because if you give it to them right away when they're 6 years old and 7 years old, they're gonna buy a bunch of candy and just a bunch of toys and spend their money on nonsense because they're a child. Baby, I gave you the key of the house for you to cook my meal on the oven, not for you to play with your dolls at this time. Come on. Come on, baby, you're better than this. And the other condition is they have to reach a certain age for them to be able to reproduce. And no, I'm sorry, a single pube does not mean that they're able to reproduce. It's just the onset of puberty. It does not actually mean that they're capable of actually reproducing. I don't see you eating green bananas just because it has a sliver of yellow in it. Pedophilia to the side, there is something that's very interesting about Sunnism, where they say that any society or any community that has been led by a woman, that society is surely to fail. I guess that's maybe why Saba, the nation that has been mentioned in the Quran, where they had a queen who believed in God and she was a righteous person and she did work alongside with Solomon and believed with Solomon. Apparently that's a failed community. She was not capable of leading her people to God and actually having a community where it's extremely successful, that they thought that they could take Solomon on. I guess God doesn't know. Prophet Muhammad knew better according to their hadith, because we know the hadith abrogates the Quran. So when God is talking about queens, the hadith is saying there shouldn't be queens because Queen Elizabeth was a complete failure. But let's say that you did end up marrying a Sunni. I do have a warning for you. If he wants to have sex time with you, you can't deny him sex time. Because if you deny sex to a Sunni and he goes to his bed angry, the angels will curse you. He has every right on your body, even though God tells us in chapter 3 that we can't force ourselves or take them in a way that shouldn't be taken. But to them, your property. They can have sex with you whenever they feel like, even if you're tired after taking care of their 8 children because you're just a glorified baby machine. And don't feel too sad, because you do have a friend in the way that you should be approaching your life. In fact, when it comes to prayer, you're equivalent to a donkey or a black dog. You get to pick, because there's clearly a hadith that says that if a black dog or a donkey or a woman crosses in front of you while you're praying, it's invalidated, you whores of Babylon. So I mean, if you're looking forward to being dressed in all black and just showing your eyes, even though there's hadith that says that it's okay for a woman to show her face, but that's a weak hadith according to Salafism, that you need to cover up and even your voice.
أما على الصوت فإذا كانت شابة صوتها يفتن فإنها لا تظهر صوتها إذا كان في فتنة.
Shut your mouth, temptress. You're trying to seduce me by asking me for directions. Get out of here. So you need to actually not exist, just completely ignored until it's time for you to produce a baby. And it's very unfortunate if God has decreed that you cannot actually have a child, that you are going to be barren because God decides and decrees what he wants. You're just a waste of a human being at this point.
The Prophet ﷺ was asked, O Prophet of Allah, there is a woman of lineage and good religious practice, but she's barren, she's infertile, she cannot have children. Can I marry her? The Prophet said no.
What is your real purpose? You cannot get educated, you cannot have a position of leadership, you can't even travel unless someone holds your hand and babysit you the whole way.
The Prophet ﷺ clearly mentioned in hadith, authentic hadith in Bukhari, the woman should not travel without a mahram.
Because you can't find your confidence, you can't find your voice, you can't find your soul, you can't find who you are, nor can you actually sit there and strive for your Lord the way that other women strove for their Lord. Because in Sunni Islam, the woman is non-existent until she is needed for making another baby. And it better be a man, because we're always upset when we get a daughter. Because you know why? We shouldn't take care of another man's daughter if that man died. You should go make your own children. And we're always looking for a boy, a male, an heir. Because you could see those guys with 8 daughters who's really upset that he keeps having daughters. He just keeps trying for a man, a son that is. But unfortunately, maybe he picked the wrong wife, because those girls are cursed. You know, the interesting part is they always tell us that God is with the oppressed, and God is truly with the oppressed. Naturally, by default, a woman is oppressed because God gave favor to a man, and he made them more physically capable, that they can handle a little bit more. So logically, on the day of judgment, a man's judgment would be a little bit more tougher than a woman's judgment because the man had more responsibility. Or did you think that God is not fair? Actually, it's technically somewhat of a blessing to be a woman in this life, because you technically have it easier on the day of judgment. But not according to Sunnism. You're the biggest test, you witches of Salem. You need to be put on the cross and killed if you look at a man in the wrong way, even though if he marries you and rapes you, that's completely fine. So I don't know what they keep trying to tell you, that, men do have a degree over women. But God made a specific clause on who has a degree over you if you're a woman. It's that if he is your husband, and that he's spending on you. So if you're an independent woman and you are making your own money and you're not getting paid by your husband, that degree that they consider that they have and they must have actually does not exist. Even in their own books, it kind of shows that Khadija was kind of running the show because she was the one spending the money and Prophet Muhammad wasn't spending the money. But to them, you can't quote Khadija because Khadija is just this off case where she was a leader. She ran a business and she took care of a man, and she was older than the man when she got married. When you can become as good as Khadija, then you can go act like Khadija and copy her sunnah. So why are you copying a man you can't even amount to? But that's just a red herring. It's not supposed to be that way. The Queen of Saba, that's also a red herring. And not marrying little children, that's what you need to be doing. But they have it the other way. So unfortunately, Sunnis like to preach their nonsense, but they don't respect women. Women have absolutely every right to be in a mosque. Women have absolutely every right for education. Women have absolutely every right to seek for their own independence as long as they're being modest and sticking to the rules of God. Because it's not man that's going to protect women, it's God that protects women. And if God has believing men, they will also protect women, but it would be God protecting them, just through the hands of believing men. From abusive, oppressive people, a generation that attributed a lot of things to the Prophet, which the Prophet didn't say or do, nor did he go around beating women. So maybe Sunnis should take a really deep look upon themselves, because I don't think it's the Shias that are making fun of Aisha. You yourself in your own hadith say a lot of nonsense about Aisha, that crooked women that is on par with those whores that were trying to seduce Joseph and get him into sin. So I don't know what you guys want from me, but I don't want your religion. God saved me from it. And I pray that he saves all these women that are under your oppressive regimes, making them second-class humans, not even second-class citizens. And the interesting part is God tells us that your wives, your spouses, they are the flowers of this worldly life. And how do you treat your flowers, huh? You just cover her up until nobody knows who she is. And now in this day and age, because you don't do your part and can't find her a husband, she's just lost in this online world trying to find somebody who would actually marry her, because absolutely nobody truly knows her. Isn't that a crazy world that we live in? So you want to take the Western style of education and the Western style of life, but you don't allow them to have the Western style of dating for them to actually meet spouses, which I'm not recommending to do so. But maybe you shouldn't be covering her when she's 4 years old. Hey, don't listen to this guy. We have a hadith that says heaven is underneath the foot of your mother, who's most likely going to hell.